You don't want a critical, harsh, negative vibe when you do this, when you go through this activity. What's that mean? Oh my. Thank you for joining me today to chat about this very important issue of performance anxiety. My name is Johan Bester, and I'm so glad that you have taken the time to invest in your personal growth. The fear of getting up in front of other people is something that we all have to deal with, irrespective of what we do. Whether you are in charge of a team at work, or a university lecturer, or a school teacher, even a student at varsity or in school. Or maybe you are part of a team somewhere, and inevitably you will have to talk to the rest of your team at some stage, right? So last time we started our discussion on this topic by talking about 3 areas which are common to most people when it comes to getting up in front of other people. And they are memory, delivery, and psyche. If you missed part 1, I highly suggest you go and check that out. Pause this, go and check that out first so that all of this will make much more sense to you. Now today we want to look at possible ways in which you and I can deal with these 3 areas of challenge. There definitely are some thought processes and also some practical things that we can do to get better in this fear that we have of failing in front of other people. So firstly, some general tips. Something that many of us often do is we ask someone whom we trust to listen to our presentation, right? So this could be a friend, a colleague, your mother, whoever, okay? And I think it's a good idea, except it's very important that you choose someone who know you very well, who loves someone who loves you, and you also must know this person very well. The reason I'm saying this is this has to be a safe space. You don't want a critical, harsh, negative vibe when you do this, when you go through this activity. What's that mean? Oh my. But you want honest opinions from people who love you. You want to hear from someone else from a different perspective what the thing that you do sounds like and looks like. So that's a very good idea. Another general tip when it comes to practicing, whatever you're preparing for, is to record yourself. Okay, so I suggest firstly doing voice only or audio recording, so that the only thing that you focus on when you listen back is just the sound. So what does it sound like? And then the next step is you actually record yourself on video, so that now you can also see what you look like when you do your thing. I know most people absolutely dislike listening to themselves, and even worse, watching themselves. I get it. But the thing is, if you are serious about conquering this thing, if you are serious about getting better at getting up in front of people and presenting whatever you do, then you just have to get over it. Okay? I promise you will stop cringing after the first few times. Just make this a set habit when you prepare a presentation or a performance. So when you're doing the audio-only recording, you will be able to focus, if it's a speaking thing that you do, you'll be able to focus on general things like, did I take time to breathe? Did I vary my pitch and dynamics? Did I vary the tempo in my speech? Things like that. By the way, I did a Voice Matters on the elements of voice in speech. Voice Matters, chapter 8, episode 8. You should check that out. But then if I'm preparing for a musical performance, and then in that audio recording, I can just focus on what my music sounds like, whether I was singing or playing an instrument. I can listen to phrasing, intonation, dynamics and all of that kind of stuff. But just focus on the sound, no visual distractions. Here's the sobering truth about recording yourself. The recording does not lie. Yeah? You know how people listen to their voice and they go, ew, that's not what I sound like. Yes, it is exactly what you sound like. The thing is, you are not used to hearing your voice that way, which is why you have to record yourself so that you can get used to hearing the truth about what your voice sounds like. Okay, it's very important. So when you listen back or watch your recordings and there are things you don't like, don't freak out. Work out why you don't like it. And then next time try and do it differently. It's as simple as that, really. Then the next thing, my next point is maybe something that you might think is silly, but it's actually very important. And I'm talking about what you eat and drink on the day of your presentation or your performance. Maybe you've learned this the hard way, like I have. Look, we have to work out what kinds of foods or drinks affect us in what way. I mean, this is actually just logical. If there's a certain kind of food that you like, but when you eat it, it makes you very gassy, then you don't want to eat that just before you go up in front of people, right? I mean, that's, like I said, it's just logical. And then things like high sugar concentration can actually affect your ability to concentrate, your cognitive abilities. So I avoid that in general, but definitely hours before or on the day of my moment of getting up in front of other people. Then if you're going to use your voice, so a speaking engagement or singing, you definitely want to avoid dairy products, everything that's related to cow's milk. And the reason for that is, for most people, dairy thickens the mucus. The layers of mucus that sit on your vocal folds gets thickened by dairy products. So what that causes is that you feel like there's something sitting there all the time. You want to clear your throat all the time. So don't do that. And then finally, as a general tip, obviously you have to look after your physical energy levels. Right, so the main thing here, of course, is sleep. You cannot perform at your peak, no matter what kind of presentation you do in front of other people. You can't perform at your peak if you haven't slept well the night before. Actually, I have found in my life that even 2 nights before is super, super important. Point is, we have to consider our physical energy levels and ensure that we are well rested, well hydrated, especially before a big event. Right, so now we're going to look at the 3 challenges that I mentioned earlier. Firstly, we're going to look at challenge number 1, memory, the fear of forgetting. Now, there really isn't too much to say about this other than if you don't want to forget and mess up, you have to be super prepared. Practice, practice, practice. And then practice more. Literally. Now, you know that saying, practice makes perfect. It's not quite the complete statement that I think it ought to be. It should say, the right practice makes perfect. Effective practice is super important, but it will be slightly different depending on what you prepare for. If you're preparing a song versus a piano or violin or flute piece that you're going to perform, or whether you're going to speak, the setting that you're going to do that in, it'll be slightly different, the preparation. But the bottom line is, firstly, you need to ask guidance from people who know a lot about the thing that you do. So someone who's a specialist in your field, right? And learn the methods, the psychology, the techniques of practicing correctly for that thing. And then for another tip of being well prepared memory-wise, I suggest that you don't always start at the beginning of whatever you do and try to run all the way through to the end without hesitating or making mistakes. Most people do that. They start at the beginning and they try to get through. You may have found, like I have, that if you do that, You always get stuck at the same spot. Isn't that true? So here's my suggestion. Rather than starting at the beginning, why don't you just start in the middle? Even pick a random spot in your speech or your piece of music. Just start there and do just a little section. Then maybe start close to the end, the conclusion, or the last 8 bars of your music. Start there and just do the ending. Then do the beginning. Right? So if you think of your presentation or your performance as a puzzle, let's make that analogy. When you build a puzzle, it's not like and it's just all the pieces fit together perfectly right from the outset, right? You start with smaller pieces. Most people start with a corner, the frame, and then maybe you see a little bit here that goes where you go. There's a lot of detail there. There's like the horse, the eye, and like the mane. You can see that, and you put that little bit together. And then here is the trunk of a tree, and there's a cloud, right? So you put together smaller pieces. And as those smaller pieces get bigger, more secure, more complete, then it gets much easier to put it all together to get the whole. And then finally, I do a little test with myself. Actually, it's a rule that I made for myself. If I want to be 100% sure that I know the thing that I have to present to people, I say to myself, you have to be able, Johan, to do it 3 times in a row with no hesitation, no mistakes. And if I cannot do it 3 times in a row, guess what? I go back to practicing. This is actually a very, very good tip. And I suggest you try that. Right, so that is a few things that we can think of and try when it comes to memory, the fear of forgetting. Now, challenge number 2, delivery. The fear of not doing it right. The issue of how we deliver our performance is again somewhat different for speaking versus performing music. Like if I'm playing the piano or the violin, or even if I'm singing, then the structure of what I'm doing is preset. What do I mean by that? Everything in the music was predetermined by the composer, the person who wrote the music. The melodies, the rhythms, the dynamics, all those things are preset. Whereas when I do a verbal presentation, then everything is in my control. I'm in charge of setting up the structure of it. So it is slightly different in that way. But regardless of whether it is a musical performance or a verbal presentation, there are a number of important things for us to consider. And these things that I'm going to list now are all things that are under our control. I'm thinking about stuff like what I'm wearing, where and how I stand or sit for my presentation, how well I meet my audience's eyes when I enter the stage or the platform and during my presentation. Then, does my face and my body communicate the same thing that my words are? How I finish my performance or my speech. How I acknowledge my audience's applause, if that is appropriate, if there is applause. And how I exit the stage. Like these kinds of things are all under my control. And And all of these things must be practiced and recorded and watched and re-recorded and watched, right? Until I know that looks good, that works, all these different elements. But all these things are under your control, so you can practice them. And now, another thing that many of us find very challenging is using a microphone. So having your speaking amplified by a sound system. Unless you deal with a mic in your daily doings or very frequently in your chosen profession, then a microphone can be a very daunting thing for many people, very intimidating. It's unfamiliar, right? It's not something that you're used to. Now, someone like me, I've been using microphones for many, many, many years, but I'm still anxious about a sound system and a microphone sometimes. Not because I don't know how to use a mic, right? I have a great frame of reference and a lot of experience. But the thing that freaks me out sometimes is I don't know what the quality will be of the sound system that I have to use. It's awesome if you have your own venue or your own PA system that you take with you wherever you go. But that's not the case for most of us. Most of the time, we're going to go to a new venue, a new setting, and we don't know what the microphone, the speakers, the sound is going to be like. Unfortunately, we don't have control over this thing. This is an external factor, an external reality that we will encounter at different venues and on different stages. So here's my advice. You must have a sound check in your venue. So you must think about this, right? So you must plan it. You must make sure that it's definitely confirmed with the people of the venue or the tech people of the venue that you will be there at a certain time. So you must go early so that you can be calm and unrushed when you do your sound check. And preferably there must not be other people in the room, especially not some of your audience members, like the people who are coming to see your presentation. None of them must be in the building when you do your sound check. It sort of spoils the illusion, if that makes sense. So the only people in the room must be the tech people or the sound guy and maybe one or two other people who work on the event. But take the time to stand where you're going to stand or sit where you're going to sit. Use the microphone, whether it's a lapel, a handheld, or one of these kinds of mics. Use it, listen to the sound, record it if you want to, listen back to it, and make sure that you and the tech person understand each other and you get the sound to be as good as it possibly can. Make sure there are batteries in the microphone, that they are fully charged, all those kinds of things. That's actually your responsibility, right? Well, you might say, no, it's the sound guy's responsibility. And technically it is, but the point is, if he or she missed something and you fail on stage, then actually it was your responsibility to make sure that all those things worked. I can't stress this enough. The more you practice, record, assess, and repeat, practice, record, assess, repeat. The more you do that, the more likely you will grow in the effectiveness of your delivery. You'll get more comfortable and relaxed, more confident, more able to just be yourself and enjoy what you're doing, all in a highly effective package. So that is delivery, right? The fear of not getting it right. Now we move on to challenge number 3, which is the psyche. This one is the fear of not being good enough. People are complicated, have you noticed? And do you realize that you are complicated? This is very important, that we are very realistic about everything that makes us who we are. The issue of the human soul, which incorporates mind, will, and emotions, and the human spirit is a super complex issue, right? We are all, this is a big statement, you and I are the sum total of everything that we have seen, heard, felt in our entire lives. I mean, that's a profound thought. We're affected by every single person that we've ever engaged with. Think about that. Parents, other family members, teachers, classmates, people who serve us in retail stores, restaurants, fast food places, people on the train, on the bus, people who share the highway with us in their own car, politicians, preachers, and so on and so on. Everything that you've heard and seen in your life affected who you are today. That's why it's so complicated. Add to that the stuff that you've been through in your life, especially the hard stuff, the challenges, the losses, humiliations, but also the incredible moments of joy and of celebration and of success, the failures and the accomplishments, the times you almost just wanted to die, and the times when you felt like you're on top of the world. The question is, how do we harness all of that experience and knowledge of life and of ourselves? How do we harness that in a moment when we have to present something to a group of listeners or viewers? And, maybe more challenging, What can we do to ensure that these things do not stop us from having the impact and success that we should and want to have? Now, in my opinion, these questions don't have simple answers. You and I just have to keep living, striving, working hard to become the best version of ourselves. This can only happen in community with others who genuinely love us, support us, guide us, help us. It is therefore of the utmost importance that you surround yourself with people who will do just that. And I fully realize that this is easier said than done. I mean, if you're a 15-year-old school student who live with your parents and who have no significant income, you are dependent on so many factors outside of your control, then of course it's much harder to choose who you are surrounded by every day, right? But even in that scenario, you still have many opportunities and many moments in your days and in your weeks where you can in fact choose how and who you spend your time with. Then as we grow older and we begin to have more and more say of what our lives look like, this ability to choose increases, of course, as we are almost forced by life to take responsibility for these kinds of decisions and for who we are becoming. Furthermore, you and I absolutely have to keep investing in ourselves. This could include reading, studying, learning new techniques and skills in our chosen field of work, and making time to be alone and quiet, just meditating on things in our lives, etc. The moment we stop learning, we start dying. This issue of I'm not good enough goes much deeper than what you and I have time for here today. But what I will say is that each one of us should really work very hard to find out what we are naturally good at. What makes us feel alive? What revitalizes? What replenishes? What rejuvenates me? What makes me feel good? The other thing is you and I must learn to think correctly about this thing about performing or getting up in front of other people. The big idea is not to care too much about what others think. Now, I don't mean that in a disrespect. I'm not going to disrespect my audience. I'm not going to have this attitude of, I don't care what they think. I'll just do what I want to do. That's not what I'm talking about, obviously. But if I get up, I'm well prepared. And I'm myself, I'm authentic, I'm real, and I do my thing, and I'm passionate, and I'm focused, and I'm committed, then there will be people, always, who don't like the way I did it, who don't like what I said, who don't like the way I interpret a piece of music. But there will always be people who are affected in a good way, positively, by what I do as well. So if I go up and I'm prepared and all of that, then I should have a bit of an attitude of, it doesn't really matter what that lady, when my eyes met hers, she looked bored. It doesn't really matter what she thinks. I know who I am. I know what I have to do. So I'm just going to get up there and give it my best shot. I can only ever do my best at any given time, in any given moment. This is a truth that many of us find hard to deal with, especially those of us who are quite hard on ourselves. We have high standards. Some of us are even perfectionists. And it's not a bad thing to have a high standard. Like I have a high expectation of myself. I want and expect myself to do well. As long as you and I remember that we are always on a journey. Okay? I never want to get to the point where I feel like I've arrived in this area. I'm no longer on a journey. I've arrived. I know everything and nobody can teach me anything, and I cannot improve and I cannot learn and I cannot grow. I'm always on a journey. So that moment when I get up in front of people to perform or do something, I do my best and I see it as another step in my journey of growing towards the best version of myself. Try not to bite off more than you can chew. So avoid getting yourself into situations where you have to deliver something that is beyond you or something that you are not confident about. if I, for instance, have to choose a song to perform on a stage, I'm never going to choose a song that I'm not 100% sure I can conquer. That would just be silly. Because here's the thing, if you have a really bad experience on a stage or in front of other people, this is how our brains work, unfortunately. We remember that negative moment, that bad experience, far more than we remember all the good experiences and all the successes that we had. You can have 10 successful performances or presentations and then one bad one, and it'll feel like you are 10 steps back. So don't put yourself in a situation, if you can help it at all, where what you have to do is actually beyond you. So by following many of the steps that I mentioned in this chat, like preparation, recording and analyzing, getting feedback from trusted people, etc., you and I are more likely to put ourselves in a position to succeed. The reality is that, as with most things in life, the more you do something with intentionality, the better you should become at it. This is not brain surgery, it's just logical. It's just a fact. Exercise the process of preparation and the process of delivery over and over and over. If you just keep at it, believe in yourself, are open to constructive feedback, and also keep refining your mission, you will improve over time. No question. And of course, this is not something that's going to change overnight. And sure, some personality types find it easier to get up in front of others. Like you can see those kids when they are 3 years old. They just have a lot of confidence. While some of us have to work a bit harder to accomplish that. However, if you believe that you have to do something in order to keep growing into a better version of yourself, then any one of us can conquer this issue. One step, one day, one event at a time. So yeah, that is a bit of a look into a few things that we can do to try and conquer these areas of fear of getting up in front of other people, the fear of failing in front of other people. The thing is, now it's over to you. It's up to you to go and make this work. Follow these steps. Try it. Maybe not all of it works for you, but some of it will. Try it. Exercise it. Record all of the things that we talked about. You can and you must keep investing in yourself and improving in this area. My name is Johan Bester, reminding you that your voice matters.